What is going on, Illumineers, and welcome back into the Madhouse. And today I have another Set Champs decklist video, but this one's really special because this is a budget version. I have 6 deck lists for you, all below $125, and these are not bad. These are very good lists that can very easily win you a Scar if you go in and pilot them effectively. These are lists that you could go in and you could win a first place playmat if you really wanted to. These are not budget because they're bad. They're budget because they're still great cards, and we're just pulling a couple of the cards that might make them a little bit better, but they're very minor in the grand scheme of things. So I hope you guys enjoy this video. We will talk about how you can make these lists better in the sense of adding some of these more expensive cards, but you definitely don't need them. All right, so whether you're trying to get a friend into it for the first time, you don't want to spend more money on more cards, whatever it is, take these lists and I promise you're going to do fine without breaking the bank, so we can live like Scrooge McDuck and have all this money and roll around and swim in it and do all these great things. But with that being said, let's start off with our cheapest list. We have green purple coming in at $69. All right, and ladies and gentlemen, if you look at this list, it's going to look very, very familiar because this is essentially Mo's list. He was number 1 going in NA Continentals on day 2, and all we've done to this list is we've cut the 4 genies. Those genies are coming in at about $18 to $20 right now on TCG Player. So we cut those and we just kind of added a couple, we replaced them by adding in an Ursula and then 2 rabbits, or maybe one rabbit. But essentially, if you wanted to add those in, you could cut an Ursula, cut 2 rabbits, and then cut one of something else. Look up Mo's list and copy pasta that. And that's how you upgrade this, because this is his deck list. But what are we trying to accomplish with this? It is an aggro green purple list. You want a lot of 1-drops. So you can go 1 on 1 and then 2 on 2. And when you look at these 1-drops, the first 3 draw you cards. An evasive one that's hard to deal with. This one makes your opponent discard. So they're really good 1-drops. That Olaf, if going into game 2, you realize they're a Steel Song player, that Olaf is going to do really good work, because you can bounce that with Madam Mim or this Fox or Crab and it survives, and just really good 1-drops. And one of your best plays will be 1-drop on 1, 2 1-drops on 2, unless maybe against Steel Song where you might want to drop and get that snake. But the rest of it, you have a lot of reach. You have the White Rose and the Goat, so you have that 7 lore there. Arguably 11 with Goat because it's guaranteed to lore almost always. And then you have Go-Go, which is a lot of reach. And Go-Go paired with Lyle is a super great combo because you can play Lyle and it forces your opponent to then challenge the next turn unless they have nothing to challenge into. But now their character's exerted, so maybe you have an Olaf down, you play a Crab, your Olaf now does 4 damage to their character, and then you can play Go-Go, and Go-Go now comes in and gains you 4 lore. So that's pretty great. You have a lot of disruption with your Ursula and your Cloud Kicker. So you remove a song, whether it's against Steel Song or against Red Blue, to cut a B-Prep. And then you have Cloud Kicker, really awesome card of just disrupting what they're trying to do and coming in and saying, you had a plan and I'm messing it up now. And, of course, we have Prince Philip that is a 3/2/2 with Ward. So most people will have a hard time challenging into this and winning that trade because of his 3 attack. So you just have a character that's really sticky for only being a 3/2 because he has that really annoying Ward effect. So really good, really effective list. This is the cheapest on this video, and it might be one of the most effective in terms of giving you lots of different lines into a lot of different builds and just going really fast as well. Next up, though, we do have Coffin with his Baja Blast, his Clarabelle Time Walk, and this list is coming in at $94. And when we look at this list, you don't even have to upgrade it. This is Coffin's exact list, a list that he's piloted very well with an extremely great win rate on a couple different platforms that he plays on. And when we look at it, It's nothing. Well, it is super crazy. But this is a very much a controlled deck. You want to spend your early turns really ramping. You really want to get to that turn 3 muses in a lot of different matchups, because on turn 3 with muses, you can start controlling the board a little bit better. You can start singing some of these songs you really want to sing, and then you just start gaining a lot of, grip on the game as time goes on. But ramping is incredibly important with this list. Don't be worried about getting super low with cards, because you have Hiram, you have Clarabelle to draw you a lot of cards. You could even go as far as, if you play, you could play Cloud Kicker on turn 3 to bounce one of their characters. Turn 4, you bounce your own Cloud Kicker because you need the card draw with your welcome. So you draw 2 cards and you get Kit back. So there's a lot of lines in this list. It probably is the most difficult to pilot really effectively, but it might be one of the most fun. Just know that ramp is extremely important. You're playing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 9 characters over 5, and then you're playing 3 actions that cost 7, and it's uninkable. So it's really important that you hit that ramp, you set up those really good draws. Don't be afraid to your welcome their character if you have a Clarabelle down, because then that helps your draw. Like, it's a really fun list. If you've never tried it, I really recommend it. And one of the best feelings in the world is to hit them with a bend to my will when they're just not expecting it, where they don't respect that you might have it. It feels really, really good. I promise you, it feels great. So just a good list. If you can make it past the early game, you're in really good shape of being able to really cinch that win down, because you can just start controlling so well. So next up on our list, we have a Purple Steel aggro list. This is coming in at $114. And when we look at this list, it's just an aggro list. It's very reminiscent of what we saw last set. You're running 16 1-drops that are, 12 of them are drawing you cards. One of them is questing for 2 each turn. We have our dock draw power as well as our library. So you could play out these 1-drops turn 3, you play out library, and then you move them all on turn 4, so you can refill your hand that way. We've got 4 of Befuddle and 4 Fire the Cannon, and that is simply to help you control the board while you do things, while you get ready, because if the Fire the Cannons is one of your strongest cards in your deck against Steel Song, because you can blow up their sending on, your turn 1 or turn 2, depending on if you're on the play versus on the draw. We have Top In with Gantu 4, and he is just an extremely powerful card. Every time I've ever played Gantu, I've never been upset about it, because that ability to quest for 4 and then trade into pretty much anything is amazing. It feels so good. And then we have Reach with the 4 White Roses and the 4 Goats. Again, we've got the 8 lore there, or the 12 lore if you count Goat as 2. And then Pete, one of the best disruption cards in the game, by disrupting some of the most effective things that people are trying to do. So a good example of things that could happen is you go turn 1, a 1-drop, turn 2, double 1-drop or a Smee, and then turn 3 you play a Pete, and that's really effective against Steel Song, because now they can't get ready to start blowing up your characters, because turn 4 you play a Goat, and it really can get out of hand very quickly, and especially once you get library down, because then they really start getting punished for blowing your characters up, because you can start to go so wide the further the game goes on. One thing to remember with Befuddle is it returns a character to their hand that costs 2 or less. So that is cost 2 or less. That's not attack 2 or less. Some of the best cards in the game right now are 2-drops in Smee and Calhoun. So if they play a Calhoun to answer your 1-drops, you can just bounce it back. And then now they have to decide, are they going to set up their Alice on turn 3? Are they going to set up whatever it was they wanted to do? Or do they need to play the Calhoun so they can try and control your board? So Befuddle, another extremely powerful card in this list, because Calhoun is such a popular card right now. So this is a really good one, again, coming in at $114. So we've gotten above that $100 range, but a very good list. And a lot of these cards have been around for a really long time. The only set 6 card being Rose and Gantu. So there's a good chance you already have a lot of these cards, especially if you bought the starter deck back that used to have the foxes and some of these other cards in it. So next up on our list, we have everybody's favorite hyper aggro list. We have purple yellow coming in at $117, so $3 more than the purple steel list. And when we look at this list, again, a lot of these cards have been around for a really long time. The only new cards being Befuddle and Rose, and or Diablo and Rose. And when we look at this list, we still have some of those really impactful cards. We have Befuddle to stop their Calhouns. We have Chromicons, which feels really nice because with Chromicon, we can start to refill our own hand. And we don't really care about refilling their hand because we just need characters to play. When we look at it, we've got 4, 8, 16, 20 1-drops. So you're really just throwing everything out. And then you will get into top deck mode. That's very normal for purple, yellow, hyper aggro. But you don't mind because when you look at it, all of these cards that you're top decking are gaining you a lot of lore. We got gains 2 lore, potentially 3, 2, potentially 3, like all really effective stuff. If you wanted to, you could add in something like libraries here in place of bosses on a roll. Bosses on a roll, I just really like that over library because it allows you to set up your next turns. And so it can just be really effective of maybe you only need 3 lore. And so you use bosses on a roll to gain 1, and then you see that 5 turns from now you would have drawn a gathering knowledge. So now you bring it up. And you're just doing a lot of really strong things. It's one of the best starts in the game is like Daisy and then double Daisy on 2 and then a Donald Duck on turn 3. And you're essentially just won at that point and your opponent doesn't even get to play the game. And again, we have that reach package with the goats and the roses. If you wanted to upgrade this list, the zombie Lilo is going to be a good option. You could just throw 2 of those in here for the Windy Darlings and then probably 2 in for Donald Duck. That zombie Lilo is really nice because it guarantees you a character that you can continue to play back over and over and over again when you get into top deck mode. So if you have one sitting around or a couple, definitely throw those in here. And I would start with cutting the Windy Darlings and then move to the Donald Ducks. But really good list. We saw this list won a lot of set champs last set. It wasn't this exact list, of course, but we saw purple, yellow, hyper aggro winning a lot because people, sometimes you just win before they can do anything. It's a really good feeling winning the game on turn 4. Like it's nasty what this deck can do. Next up on our list, we have a Ruby Steel list, and this one is coming in at $120, and this list is different. Ruby Steel is something that a lot of people joke about, like we want to see more of it, but we just never see a lot of it. And one of the things that it's really lacking is draw power. But with this new set, we did get a lot of things that give it a little bit more oomph. We saw the Moanas coming in, and the Moana is super nice because of the ability to work with Flynn, and that right there is just really strong because on the play, you can go Moana into Flynn Rider, and then you're pretty much guaranteed 3 lore there, so that's really big. And then a lot of decks just really struggle with getting 3 attack out early, so there's a good chance that alone gains you 6 lore. Moana also works with the new Windy Darling, so we threw her in there. She's questing for 2 as a 2/2, which feels really good. The other thing that we added in was Calhoun. I mentioned it earlier. I think the best 2-drops in the game are Calhoun and Smee, and look at that. We're running both of them. We are running the best 2-drops in the game because they're so effective. That Calhoun controls the board and then possibly gaining you 2 lore. The Mr. Smee is just gaining you 2 lore, and because you run so many captains, then your Mr. Smee is probably living and isn't going to take all of that damage. Then as we have the Doc for the draw power, we have the Sizu and the Gustav, and those are there to just continue to really get that Flynn package going off, to get that the 3 lore from the Flynn. And if like that, it's just so effective. The Flynn is one of your main win conditions of the deck, but we do have other things when we look at the John Silver. We have 10 locations in here. So we are running the mine package with the 4 docks and the 3 happies. And if you, that is very Decandio with the Amber Steel mine package. And we've seen what that can do on its own, because you don't have any, like the Storm Rage on, you don't have any, babooms or fire the cannons, befuddles. So your control has to come from somewhere. So it comes from things like 7 mines. It comes from cards that trade very well. And then it also just comes in the form of like Goofy, which is a 2/4. But we've thrown in Skull Rock to give your characters that +1. So if you have Skull Rock down, then you bring it down. Simba has a better chance of drawing you a card, and during your turn, whenever this character banishes another character in a challenge, you may draw a card. So that's just thrown in here because our only draw right now is the dock. So if we throw in Simba and then throw it on Skull Rock, it gets 3. And we can do that. So let's say you play Simba on turn 3 and your opponent doesn't respect it because it's only a 2/4. You play Skull Rock on 3, move Simba, and now it's a 3/4. And there's a lot of things that can be banished for that 3 health. And then, of course, we have the John Silver. He gains resist +1 and an extra lore for every location. And one thing that if you didn't notice from the NA Continentals, a lot of red-blue lists have cut the Medusas. So that's made things like John Silver a lot safer of a card. It's made him a lot more effective because now they all they can do is ice block and brawl. So a really effective card there. This list isn't something you see a lot of, but that's also part of the benefit of it. People have a really hard time with, what am I going to do with hyper aggro? Or not hyper aggro, but what am I going to do against their deck? So they watch videos and they try and prepare, but then you show up with something off meta like this, and they don't even know how to respond to Moana and Flynn on turn 2. And they just get really confused. They don't know what to do. They've lost. You play a Gustav, and they're like, I don't even know what that card is. How do you have a 6/6 on turn 3? Next thing you know, you're playing a John Silver and dropping 2 locations the next turn. Or you have Thebes, and you drop Thebes and something on Thebes, and now you gain 2 lore every time you banish a character. And just all these crazy things. This list is diverse in that sense that you have multiple ways to gain lore, multiple ways to draw, and just really effective. It is different. It's off meta. It's also budget at $120. A lot of these cards have been around for a while, so there's a good chance you also have them. Finally, we do have a Blue Steel Alice Aggro. This is $125. It's the most expensive list. And this looks really familiar because this is essentially Harlan's Sweets list, except I've removed a couple of the cards that were up there in price. Those cards being the Robin Hood Shift Package, Baymaxes, and the Beast Tragic Heroes. So if you wanted to upgrade this list, go look up Harlan's Sweet on YouTube and take his list because that's where this comes from. So let's talk about what we threw in there instead. So because there's no Robin Hoods, we wanted more 1-drops. So I threw in the Captain Hooks and the Basils. And in hindsight, you might be better off with just 4 Captain Hooks because Captain Hooks answers Calhoun really well, but it also protects your Smee. But I threw in the Basils because that +2, it turns your Calhoun into a 5. And if you didn't know, Basil is a support character, so you quest and you can give 2 strength to one of your characters. So now your Calhoun can become a 5/2, which is really effective. Your Mickey Mouse becomes a 3/2, which is effective. So people have to consider that. But like I said, Captain Hook might just be better because of how he works with Mr. Smee. But going through the package, we have Calhoun, of course, controlling the board that way. We have Doc for some draw power. The Alice, one of the best lines in this game is to do something like Mickey Mouse into Calhoun, into an Alice, into a Pluto, and then into a Cogsworth, because then they're just going to have a really hard time handling all of that. And we've got the Scrooge McDucks because it's just a 5/5/2. It's a vanilla 4-drop that quests for 2, and it's a 5/5. It's extremely difficult to deal with. On the top end, we have Cogsworth giving everything resist +1. Gantu coming in here with his questing for 4 that we talked about earlier. The Mickey Mouse shift line, again, it's a way to just start, gaining lore early. If you really wanted to shift that early, it trades well, being a resist +1. You could cut that for something else. One of, Harlan Sweet's running the Robin Hood package, and that's definitely better because it's gaining you that 2 lore. It's a 3/6, but the Mickey Mouse is also just another way to help you control the board immediately, because if you go Mickey on 1, Calhoun on 2, turn 3, you can shift Mickey Mouse, the big one, and then you have a 3/2 and a 3/4 resist +1 on the board, being able to trade immediately. And people just might not expect that, where they don't see a Robin Hood and they forget that the Mickey Mouse is something that does exist. Next up, we do have Babooms and Strength of a Raging Fire. These are just control pieces, that strength coming down, being, one of the really effective play is to play a John Silver on turn 3. Then their Calhoun can't challenge. And then you use John Silver to sing Strength of a Raging Fire on their Calhoun. Again, Calhoun is a super strong card, so we're always worried and always wondering, how can we get rid of it? And Strength of a Raging Fire is a really good way to do that. And then, of course, we end with the McDuck Manners, which is just one of those cards where it's 9 health. It's difficult to deal with. You're gaining 2 lore. Just a really effective 4-cost card where you can really punish someone for playing something like B-Prep, because they use their whole turn for that, and then you respond with a 9 health location, or maybe 2 9 health locations. So, with all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed the video. These lists, again, it's just something I wanted to put together. I have practiced with quite a few of these lists, not the green-purple one. I'm not a big purple player, but the other ones I have, purple steel and purple yellow. Purple yellow has been around for a really long time, and I enjoy it. But all these lists, I promise you, they can run and get you that scar. They can run and get you that scar first and second place playmat. They will do what needs to be done, and they are a more aggro line, and people just have a really hard time against aggro lines. I promise, all right? Even when you're in top deck mode and you're just like, here's a 2-quester, here's a 2-quester, here's a 2-quester, and you just win that way. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed the video. It was a lot of fun to put these lists together, to find some that works. If you do use any, please let me know in the comments. Let me know if you use it. Let me know if you think you're going to use it, because I will promise I want to know, and I want to see you succeed. So ladies and gentlemen, all of that being said, thanks for sticking around, and I will see you next time. Remember, stay happy and healthy.